Happy Sabbath Church family. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Facebook page, as well as being understanding that we are meeting online. Unfortunately, there are a couple of events and people flying out and situations where it's not as easy to meet in person right now. So therefore we're meeting online, and potentially we may be also meeting online next Sabbath. So be ready for that, even though I wish we all could be together and meet and fellowship, as well as discuss about Christ, and the love of Christ is an awesome thing. But we will reconvene on the first Sabbath in September. First Sabbath in September, we will meet together. And also, please keep in mind about upcoming events. One, we may have pretty soon, we will try to have our communion service. So please join us for that as well. With that said, I hope you guys are staying dry. I know that it was pretty heavy rain not too long ago. I'm not sure if you experienced the heavy rain, but I was walking my dogs yesterday, and this rain kept pouring down, not knowing where it came from. Weather said it was a slight chance of rain, but living in Florida, you can never really assume. We also ask that you please donate to Inspire Church. I ask that you please give to Inspire Church, that you donate to Inspire Church, and that you also give your tithes and offerings to Inspire Church. Today's message is dealing with involvement with church, church involvement. In fact, there was an article that I read according to the American Bible Society, which suggests that church might be one of the most underrated stress relievers around. And I'm not sure if you all experience stress, but like many of us, stress comes in every single form. I am dealing with stress when it comes to work. Stress with work is often to the roof at times, especially sometimes dealing with the micromanaging that Amazon often does. But with that said, maybe you're dealing with stress with relationships, dealing with stress not just with jobs, but dealing with stress with school, or dealing with stress on finding the next big thing or finding purpose in your life. But they are suggesting that apparently, according to the report, that attending church might be one of the most underrated stress relievers around. And according to the 2025 State of the Bible Survey, people who are actively involved in their church communities are less stressed, less lonely, and more hopeful than those who aren't. So being involved in your church, coming to church, attending church regularly, being active in your church is actually helping with your stress, and also makes you less lonely and more hopeful than those who aren't. There was a series, and I'm sure you've heard of it before, about the blue zones and the different blue zones around the world. And I know there's one in, I believe, Greece, one in Italy, I believe, also Japan, as well as a little small town. And if you've grown up in the Adventist Church of Loma Linda, California. And in fact, it was to a point where they were trying to prevent McDonald's from even entering into Loma Linda. They were not willing to budge, and finally they have allowed these fast food restaurants to place themselves in Loma Linda. But in these blue zones, as they did their research, one of the biggest factor of why these individuals would live much longer, aside from diet, aside from exercise, was the fact of their faith. Their faith was a big factor. And part of that faith, and tying into that faith, is being less stressed, finding balance, having more sleep, but removing themselves from the stresses of life and spending time with their family, spending time with their community, spending time with their church, spending time with each other. So the study is also showing that it actually really does exist. A lot of these communities that are considered blue zones have a lot of things in common. Aside from diet and exercise, is a lot of them is relieving that stress, and part of the ways they relieve that stress is joining a community, being one and one with each other. Now, the gaps are big enough to matter. Regular churchgoers, according to the report, nearly 40% lower stress levels. Their loneliness drops by 20%, and their sense of hope for future rises in extreme amount, about the same 40%. And so that puts us in this predicament that church involvement is in the same league and as other proven wellness exercises or like therapy, like social networks, but with an even extreme sharper case, because with these therapies, with these different exercises, it may last for a certain amount, but one thing that really lasts much longer is coming to a community and being involved in your church. Also, according to the study, is that Bible reading on its own also makes a huge difference. Reading your scripture weekly and engaging in your scripture is tied to lower anxiety and stronger resilience, sometimes outperforming things like volunteering or catching up with your latest Netflix series. But all this happens when your personal faith is combined with active participation with each other in your church. Showing up, not just coming to church, but showing up and being involved and serving others and building relationships. The chief innovative officer at the American Bible Society said this. He said, people's lives improve when they engage with their church, not just attending, but using their gifts, developing relationships, growing spiritually by taking advantage of the opportunities. Maybe the next big self-care movement isn't something that we invent, but maybe it's something that's been quietly holding people together for generations. And it's been holding people together for years and years and years and years and years and generations. The community, the involvement. The book of Acts talks about how people would often join together in groups and communities and often give whatever they had because whatever they owned wasn't theirs. I saw a Instagram reel about how early back in the day, in the early 1800s, people wouldn't have front lawns. In fact, in their front lawns, they would grow fruits, veggies, food to eat, but not just food to eat, food to share with each other, their neighbors. We have become a society where spending time with yourselves and less with others have been the trend, and therefore loneliness increases, stress increases, mental health becomes an issue. But when we get involved with church, when we get involved with our community, when we get involved with our faith and building our faith with Jesus Christ, our stress levels decreases. Loneliness decreases. Hope increases. And the study has proven that it works better than any self-care, any social study, or any exercise or therapy you can think of. Isn't it interesting that Christ created something for us to be involved with each other because he knew how much people would suffer. And the best way to bring hope to people is to get involved with each other, to love each other. That's why I'm a believer that Christ tells us to love the Lord your God with all your heart and love each other. Church, it's now time. It's high time. People are struggling out there. People are stressed. It's high time to get involved in community, to get involved with each other, spend time with Christ in your scriptures, in your journaling, whatever it is, in prayer, but also get involved in your church. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We shall see you next Sabbath.